Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. Bonjour Chloé.
Bonjour, Stephen. Hello, Mr. Mark Cypher.
Bonjour Marc.
We're glad to
Wow.
have you today.
Oui, c'est un grand honneur, grand privilège d'échanger avec Marc Seifer, qui est l'un des plus grands biographes de Nikola Tesla.
So it's a great honor to have you. You are the greatest or the more famous biographer of Nikola Tesla. And we'd like to know more about your work, about this really amazing person who is Nikola Tesla. Thank
Ok. Donc, il est l'auteur de deux livres, notamment sur Nikola Tesla. Donc, l'un qui s'appelle Le Magicien, euh, temps et époque de Nikola Tesla.
So you're the author of the books. We can see in the background. On voit les livres. The name is of one of these two books is Wizard: The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla, and the other one I don't know the name, the title.
Oh, it's called Tesla Wizard at War.
Tesla, Wizard at War. Alors ça c'est Tesla, le magicien pendant la guerre,
Oui,
le deuxième livre.
deuxième livre. Ouais.
Mhm. Okay.
Alors, pour commencer, à Monsieur Seifer, comment c'est venu l'idée de s'intéresser aux travaux de Nikola Tesla et qui est Nikola Tesla?
So, first start, how did you have the idea of working and interesting, of searching into Nikola Tesla's work, and what are his main discoveries, main inventions to your point of view?
We have to go all the way back to the 1970s. And I was working on an article on a different person. And I went down to the library in New York City, the Public Library, and I discovered an article which said that Tesla, believe it or not, it said he was born on another planet, on the planet Venus. And he came to our world, the Earth, to give us the induction motor, a hydroelectric power system, fluorescent and neon lights, remote control, wireless communication, the radio. And I thought this was pretty ridiculous because if this guy had lived, I thought I would know, who he was. So I was in the New York Public Library and I found an article from the turn of the century, actually from the 1890s, on high frequency phenomena written by Nikola Tesla. I said, my gosh, this guy's a real person. So when I got back to Rhode Island, the fellow who was the editor of the magazine I was working for, Howard Smuckler, he gave me Tesla's first major biography called Prodigal Genius, written by John O'Neill, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning author from the Herald Tribune, and another crazy book which said Tesla was living on a spaceship and traveling around the world and landing in this guy's backyard up in Canada. So I had these two, one really good book and one crazy book, and I wanted to find out more about him. So what I did was I ordered his book of patents, lectures, and articles, which I actually got from a UFO magazine. Now, this is again in 1976, and the book I have it up here. It's 1,000 pages, and he's got his 100 most important patents in there. And I'm going, wow, he's got real patents. This guy's got that are involved with motor development and electrical generation and lighting and wireless communication. So I said to myself, I got to go into the history of each of these inventions to see if he really is the inventor of the induction motor, if he really is the invention of the hydroelectric power system, fluorescent and neon lighting and wireless communication, remote control, robots. And so I did. I went into the history of all these. That became the subject of my doctoral dissertation as to why Tesla's name disappeared from the history books. And I just continued writing it. And that resulted in Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla. Now, it got published in the 1990s, 1996. At this time, in the 1990s, Tesla was still very unknown. And there was still a lot of anger and animosity against him. So there's 1,000 endnotes in there. And so anyone who read the book, if they didn't believe he was the inventor of the induction motor, they could go back and see where I got the source. And so I was able to establish that he really was the inventor of all these inventions. And the book got reviewed in the New York Times, Washington Post, Nature magazine, Scientific American, and they're all excellent reviews. It was highly recommended by the American Association for the Advancement of Science, got translated into 9 languages. It's not translated into French. It should be translated into French, but it's translated to 9 languages, and including Chinese and Russian. And that's how I really got into it.
Mm. Okay, let me translate all this. If I'll try not to forget anything important. So, Mark Seifer a découvert les travaux de Nikola Tesla dans les années 1970. So it's about the 70s you discovered about Nikola Tesla, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
1976 it began.
76, 1976, dans un article du New York Times à New York. Et c'est là qu'il a remarqué beaucoup de choses que Nikola Tesla aurait inventées. À l'époque, Nikola Tesla n'était pas du tout connu et Mark Seifer a eu des doutes sur la paternité effective de toutes ces inventions, comme le moteur à induction, les rayons X, les bateaux radiocommandés, le courant alternatif et plein d'autres choses qu'on utilise tous les jours aujourd'hui. Donc, il a eu des doutes sur la paternité de ces inventions qui étaient données, selon cet article, à Nikola Tesla. Donc, il a été dans une librairie dans les années, je crois que juste après, pour regarder le travail de Tesla, pour voir si tout cela était réel. Il a été rechercher des articles sur lui et des brevets. Il a commandé tout un ensemble de brevets qu'il a vus dans des livres. Il y avait plus de 100 brevets qui étaient attribués à Nikola Tesla. Et effectivement, ces brevets se sont avérés être des vrais brevets. Donc ça a vraiment fini de le convaincre et ça a permis d'attester que les travaux de Nikola Tesla étaient vraiment réels et n'étaient pas l'œuvre d'un charlatan ou d'un fou. Et effectivement, il s'est rendu compte que Nikola Tesla avait été effacé des livres d'histoire.
Mm.
Et, euh, et donc, il a écrit le premier livre, je crois que c'était le magicien, Nikola Tesla, le magicien, en 1996, traduit dans 9 langues, dont le chinois, dont le russe, mais pas le français. Voilà, je crois que j'ai dit l'essentiel de ce que j'ai compris. Euh, voilà, le reste, on découvrira avec Marc au fil de notre interview. Okay, so for the first question, I think we're done. And then,
On va parler de documentaires.
yes, we'll go into the documentary series of 5 episodes, the Tesla Files, that were made in 2018. We watched these episodes with Stephen, and they're very interesting. I can just advise you to do the same, all the people who are watching us. So in these files, in the Tesla files, we discovered many things. Alors, on a découvert quoi, Stephen? En français peut-être d'abord, et ensuite je le dirai en anglais.
Ouais, donc à travers ces épisodes, 5 épisodes, il parle notamment de 122 mâles qu'on a du coup qui ont été pas retrouvés en fait par
Alors,
Nestlé.
en français, on va peut-être développer un petit peu parce que les gens qui nous regardent
Ouais,
ne savent pas forcément de quoi il
oui,
s'agit. Tu veux expliquer ou j'explique?
explique. Ouais.
Alors, first, I tell it in French. Dans le documentaire, il est fait état de la dernière résidence de Nikola Tesla dans l'hôtel New
York,
Yorker.
c'est ça, ouais,
Pendant 10 ans, il a habité dans une chambre d'hôtel et il est mort dans cette chambre d'hôtel en 1943.
c'est ça.
Et une fois que sa mort a été constatée, eh bien, enfin, le FBI a fait état de 80 mâles
Mm.
qui avaient été laissés par Tesla avec des documents à l'intérieur. Et il s'est avéré au fil des épisodes de Tesla Files que finalement, c'était pas 80 mâles qui étaient à l'intérieur de cette chambre, mais bien 122 mâles. Et puis, eh bien, le gouvernement nous a dit circuler, il n'y a rien à voir. Aucun document intéressant ne fait partie de ces documents qu'on a retrouvés dans ces malles. So in English, the Tesla files talk about 80 trunks with Tesla's files. And in the end, in the last episode, we can see that it's not 80 but 122 trunks who that were in the room, in the New Yorker's room where Nikola Tesla lived for 10 years. Is that correct?
Not really. Tesla lived in two rooms at the Hotel New Yorker, and he had his files in a warehouse in New York City. This was
Mhm.
an amazing building that was designed by Stanford White, McKim, Mead and White, and it's no longer in existence. And he stopped paying his bills, and he was an old man. He was 85 years old. And John O'Neill, who had written the first biography on him, rushed to Tesla's uh, uh, nephew, Sava Kasanovic, who was the ambassador from Yugoslavia, and said all of these trunks could go out, on sale unless you pay the back rent uh, on the on the holding of them in the Manhattan storage warehouse. So he paid the back rent. There really were 80 trunks, but there were 120 counted, it could be, cups and boxes. So
Okay.
there were 120 vessels, but there were only 80 trunks.
Okay. Okay. So let me say it in French. En fait, donc Mark Seifer nous dit qu'il y avait vraiment 80 mâles et non pas 120 ou 122, et qu'en fait il y avait 120 contenants avec des documents, mais pas forcément des mâles. Par exemple, des tasses ou des boîtes, mais pas des mâles, qui ont été retrouvés. Que finalement, en fait, Nikola Tesla vivait dans deux chambres dans le New Yorker Hotel, et que toutes ces malles étaient dans un entrepôt, pas dans la chambre, mais dans un entrepôt
Mm.
qu'il louait. Donc, il payait chaque mois pour que l'entrepôt garde les malles avec tous les documents. Et qu'à un moment donné, il avait du mal à payer la location de l'entrepôt, et que l'entrepôt a menacé de vendre les malles parce que Nikola Tesla ne payait plus. Et je crois que c'est grâce au neveu que Tesla a pu garder ses malles euh, dans cet entrepôt. Euh, voilà, pour l'instant, voilà où nous en sommes au niveau du nombre de mâles. And what did these trunks contain? Do you know something else since the time of the Tesla files? Did you learn of anything more about these trunks?
Yes. In general, what the trunks were Tesla's correspondence. He saved every letter he ever got, but he knew many, many famous people. There were some items in there, physical items that he had, but mostly they were his documents. Uh, and they were all eventually shipped to Belgrade, to the Tesla Museum
Mhm.
in Serbia. But the American government held on to these trunks. This was during World War II, and Yugoslavia was a communist country. So they held on to these trunks for 10 years, and the military studied these trunks. So
Mhm.
when I wrote Tesla Wizard at War, the second book, I got the information from the museum from the Tesla's negotiations with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union in the 1930s, and also with the British War Office.
Mhm.
And I also discovered, which was not discussed in the Tesla files, that Tesla was in negotiations with General Andrew McNaughton. General Andrew McNaughton was the head of secret weapons development for the Canadian government, essentially for the British Empire. He was third in line to be the head of Allied forces after Dwight D. Eisenhower and Mountbatten. So he was very high up on the food chain, and you can see pictures of him with Winston Churchill. So we wanted to do more shows, but we lost our funding. And so I continued it in the book Tesla Wizard at War, where I discussed Tesla's negotiations with Joseph Stalin and with General Andrew McNaughton and the British War Office, two amazing, uh, very powerful people who became essentially our allies during World War II.
So I have a question before translating. What did these negotiations
Yeah.
do? I mean, to what did they go? I mean, some.
Yes, I know what you're saying. Uh, um, uh, Albert Einstein had created, the mathematics to explain that a nucleus bomb was possible. And if the Germans got the nuclear weapon, they would have won World War II.
Mhm.
So we had to decide to build our own nuclear weapon. And the British, we worked with the British on this as well. And we worked with certain German scientists who got out, like Niels Bohr. He was not German, but he was Danish. And they came to Los Alamos. Um, but if the Germans had gotten a nuclear bomb, they would have flown it over either to England or to New York. And Tesla had a particle beam weapon. That's what, the subtitle is the Genius, the Particle Beam Weapon, and the Pursuit of Power. So Tesla had a particle beam weapon, which is like a laser weapon, very much like the Iron Dome that Israel now has. So if a plane came over with the atom bomb, a laser like event with a car, and we would shoot down that. So Tesla was trying to sell his particle beam weapon to the Soviets and also to Great Britain to protect Great Britain from all the V-2 rockets that the Germans were sending over. So he was negotiating with basically Winston Churchill's right-hand man, General McNaughton. He was also negotiating with Franklin Roosevelt's people, and we discovered a letter which is in the Tesla files signed by Franklin Roosevelt wanting to meet with Tesla, and it had to do with his particle beam weapon.
Ok, so en français. En fait, donc dans ces malles, dans ces contenants, on a trouvé toutes les lettres enfin, ils ont trouvé, le gouvernement américain a trouvé toutes les lettres écrites par Tesla et aussi des objets qui ont été transférés 10 ans plus tard, après la mort de Tesla en 43, au musée de Belgrade, le musée Tesla, dont on va parler d'ailleurs tout à l'heure, donc en Serbie. Dans ces lettres, on a vu des négociations qui ont été faites entre Tesla et les divers gouvernements, le gouvernement russe, le gouvernement américain et le gouvernement britannique. Parce que Tesla, à ce moment-là, avait mis au point une arme qui s'appelle d'ailleurs the name of the weapon is Teleforce, no?
It was also called that. It was called a Teleforce and also particle beam weapon. Both are correct.
En fait, le nom de cette arme, ça s'appelait Teleforce, mais aussi l'arme à laser de particules. Donc c'était un rayon que les journalistes aussi avaient nommé le rayon de la mort, Death Beam ou Death Ray. Parce que grâce à ce rayon, on pouvait viser des avions, des milliers d'avions à plusieurs centaines de miles. Je crois que c'était 250 miles, donc c'est à peu près 400 kilomètres. Oui, c'est ça, 400 kilomètres de distance. Is that right? 250 miles away, the beam. They could reach planes.
Yes, you did some good research. Yes.
Ah. Mhm. Donc à peu près 250 miles de distance pour atteindre des avions et les descendre en fait. Et cette arme, elle était en compétition avec l'arme nucléaire de Einstein. Donc en fait, Tesla voulait vendre cette arme avec les différents gouvernements. Et by the way, we saw in the first or the second episode of Tesla Files that the director of Belgrade Museum, Tesla Museum, refused to show you the signature at the end of an agreement between Tesla and a Russian company, Amtorg company, right?
Yeah.
Did,
Yes.
did you know why he didn't want to show you these signatures?
Yes. Dr. Jovanovich is a good friend of mine, and he's dealing with a horrible bureaucracy above him. So he played hardball because we had not agreed yet that we had not yet negotiated to see the signatures. So he held on to that agreement. But the reason that he did was because he was basically dealing with a very difficult bureaucracy above him. So he wanted to play hardball. That's really what it
Mm,
came down to. He's a good friend of mine. He's a wonderful man.
okay. And do you know now if there was the Tesla signature at the end of this agreement? Do you know?
Yes, yes. I haven't physically seen it, but he assured me that the signature was there, and there would be no reason why it wouldn't be there. I have seen, separate from the museum, I have recently documents that have been declassified from the Soviet Union,
Mhm.
uh, stating that Joseph Stalin himself had agreed to see these documents. Amtorg was the Soviet Union's company trading with the United States. Amtorg in the 1930s was trading with U.S. Steel, Henry Ford, many companies, and Tesla was one of those companies.
Ok. Alors, en fait, ce que j'ai demandé à Mark Seifer, c'est est-ce que la signature, parce que comme il y avait ces négociations avec les différents gouvernements, il y a eu également un accord qui a été signé entre Tesla et une société qui s'appelle Amtor, qui est russe et qui travaille avec les États-Unis. Euh, et ce document, on le voit dans je crois que c'était le premier épisode ou le deuxième des Tesla Files. Le directeur du musée Tesla à Belgrade en Serbie a refusé de montrer à Mark Seifer et à ses deux accompagnants la signature de l'accord. Et je demandais à Marc si il avait pu voir cette signature finalement et pourquoi la signature n'avait pas été montrée. Et il nous explique que le directeur du musée, qui est un bon ami à Mark Seifer, euh, n'avait pas l'autorisation parce qu'il avait une bureaucratie compliquée et que s'il se pliait pas aux ordres de la bureaucratie, eh bien, il aurait eu des problèmes. Donc, comme il n'avait pas conclu avec l'équipe de Mark Seifer qu'il pourrait voir la signature, eh bien, il n'a pas pu leur montrer, mais il assure, et Marc le croit, que cette signature, elle est bien là sur ce document qui permet de faire un accord entre Amtorg et Nikola Tesla. This agreement concerns the beam, the weapon, right? So
Yeah,
it means that this weapon has been sold to Amtorg.
yes. He sold it to the Russians for $25,000. Now, $25,000 during the height of the Depression, you got to multiply it by 50 or 100. I mean, it was, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's uh, amount.
Dollars. And do you know if this beam has been sold to some other governments too, or is the only Russian government who
Well,
that
the Americans had access to it. Tesla gave them access for free.
oh,
And um, I don't know for sure if the British got it. They may have gotten it. I couldn't verify it for sure, but he was negotiating with General McNaughton, many letters between them, and McNaughton sent his physicist to the Hotel New Yorker to meet with Tesla. So he probably gave them the information as well, particularly after the war broke out. But I can't verify for sure. But the Americans definitely had it. But
and do you know if they used it? Because we don't know about it.
Well, today's railgun, which works on the same principle, is a further development of Tesla's idea. Tesla used electromagnetic repelling force. If you ever played with two magnets, you can get two negatives, you can push one magnet away from the other magnet, and it's using a repelling force. So if you have a cannon and you put in these little tiny particles that are negatively charged and you have a negatively charged belt, those particles will shoot out because they will be repelled out. And that concept is the concept behind the railgun, which is used today. So
Oh,
it's a development of this
yeah, but
idea.
it's less harmful, I would say, than the death beam.
Well, it was the death beam. That was the death beam.
Ah, sorry, I thought it could shoot. It could.
Little tiny particles,
Ah, right. Okay. Um,
like a laser beam.
this device is used by the Russian and the US now.
Yes,
Yeah.
in a derivative form. It's not the same exact thing, but in derivative form.
Okay. Let me translate. So, qu'est-ce que je disais? Je demandais si le rayon de Tesla, le rayon de la mort, était avait été acheté par les États-Unis et par la Russie. Et en fait, ce qui est sûr, c'est que la Russie l'a acheté pour 25 000 $, ce qui est beaucoup en fait pour l'époque, qui correspond à plusieurs centaines de milliers de dollars actuellement, et que les États-Unis avaient accès gratuit à cette technologie. Par contre, concernant le gouvernement britannique, Marc pense qu'ils y ont eu accès, mais ne peut pas l'assurer, ne peut pas le garantir. Donc, on n'a pas de preuve que le gouvernement anglais de Grande-Bretagne, en tout cas, l'a eu entre les mains. Mais ce qu'on sait, c'est que cette arme, elle est utilisée, parce que j'ai demandé, est-ce qu'on l'utilise, est-ce que les gens l'utilisent, est-ce que les gouvernements et les armées l'utilisent actuellement? Et effectivement, ils l'utilisent, que ce soit en Russie ou aux États-Unis. C'est ce qui permet de faire une sorte de bouclier, en fait, de rejeter les avions ou les missiles qui entrent dans un certain périmètre avec des histoires d'aimants, de champs magnétiques.
Intéressant.
Voilà, donc c'était cela, ça aussi.
Ouais.
Interesting.
Alors, est-ce qu'il peut nous parler de la relation de Nikola Tesla avec JP Morgan et quel impact ça a eu sur les projets de Tesla, cette
Alors oui,
relation?
effectivement, dans les Tesla Files, il faut peut-être quand même qu'on dise à nos amis francophones que le nom de JP Morgan est apparu lorsqu'il s'agit de financer la tour Tesla. C'était à la Wardenclyffe Tower, on va le dire en anglais juste après, qui était dans l'État de New York. Et à un moment donné, JP Morgan a arrêté de financer Tesla. Donc on va demander à Mark Cypher ce qu'il sait à propos des relations entre JP Morgan et Nikola Tesla. So now we're talking about J.P. Morgan, who financed a part of his works, and particularly the Wardenclyffe Tower. Is that correct? And
Yes.
at a time, one time, he stopped to fund Tesla. Do you know what happened, and what was the how was the relationship between Nikola Tesla and JP Morgan?
I spent 2 years of daily work going through the 60 letters between Tesla and Morgan to figure out why Morgan stopped funding it. I do that in Wizard, Life and Times of Nikola Tesla. And what happened was Morgan gave Tesla $150,000 to build a tower to send wireless messages from Long Island to London and to Paris and to France, to Europe. And Tesla didn't, he ran out of money. And what happened was there was a stock market crash, but Tesla also built a larger tower than he had negotiated with Morgan. He had negotiated a 90-foot tower, but he instead built a tower that was 180 feet tall. And the reason he did was because he found out Marconi was pirating his apparatus. So he wanted to build a tower that would not only send messages to Europe, but would send it all around the world. So although the cost would be double, the revenues would be much greater influence because you could get from South America or Australia, China, Asia, all over the world. So he was trying to tell Morgan, yeah, I know the cost would be double, but the revenues will be much more greater because I will now have a mass communication system throughout the entire world. Morgan saw it as a breach of contract, which it was. And so he cut off funding with Tesla. But that's not the most important thing here. The most important thing here is that Tesla then was negotiating with other billionaires in those days. They were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, billionaires. And Morgan prevented these other uh, billionaires from investing in Tesla's tower. That's the real tragedy here. Why did Morgan not only stop funding Tesla, but also prevent other people from funding Tesla's tower? That's the real tragedy here. Because had he let Tesla get the money from elsewhere, we would have had cell phone technology and wireless communication and exactly what we're doing right now in the early 1900s as opposed to 50 or 100 years later when it slowly came into being.
Wow, but you don't really know why JP Morgan did this sabotage uh, against Tesla at the end.
Well, Tesla definitely uh, breached the contract. They negotiated a 90-foot tower and Tesla built a 180-foot tower. I
Voilà.
think ultimately that was the reason. Morgan didn't want to be embarrassed. He felt that he had been deceived. And Tesla was saying, I'm advancing the world a century. Can't we look beyond the mere money? And the tragedy here is that Morgan was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on artwork. He would buy a box
Yeah.
and he'd spend $40,000 for a box from the 1400s. So for Morgan to give him another 100,000 to finish the tower was not a big deal for Morgan. But it was a matter of pride. And I think Morgan had second thoughts later. But yes, uh, they,
Okay.
that's what happened. And I
Well,
also believe that had Tesla succeeded, it's very possible that someone like Hitler would not have been successful in creating these concentration camps because we would have had a mass communication system so much more developed in the 1910s and the 1920s that have been a lot harder to hide those horrible kinds of events. So the entire future of the world rested on the meeting between Tesla and Morgan. And that's why I spent 2 years trying to figure out exactly why Morgan did not fund Tesla. And I uncovered a lot of information, particularly in Wizard, where I really go into great depth as to what happened. And I continue it in Wizard at War.
Is it a word? Alors, très intéressant. Let me translate. Marc a pris 2 ans pour essayer de comprendre pourquoi JP Morgan avait arrêté de financer Tesla, parce il y avait un contrat de 150 000 dollars à l'époque pour construire la Wardenclyffe Tower, donc la tour qui devait faire normalement 90 pieds. Donc ça fait quoi? Ça fait 30 mètres à peu près. Et finalement, Tesla a voulu faire une tour qui était 2 fois plus élevée, si j'ai bien compris, de 180 pieds, donc de 60 mètres. Et JP Morgan a, selon Marc, été vexé, en tout cas, c'était une histoire de fierté, de voir que Tesla n'avait pas respecté les termes du contrat et ne s'était pas contenté du petit format de la tour et avait voulu être calife à la place du calife. Ça, c'est mes mots, hein. Dépasser un petit peu les engagements. Donc, il a stoppé son financement de Tesla. Et d'ailleurs, oui, j'en profite pour dire que il y avait 60 lettres entre JP Morgan et Nikola Tesla par rapport à cette négociation pour construire cette tour et pour que JP Morgan puisse le financer. Donc JP Morgan, je rappelle pour les néophytes que c'est un banquier très influent, très important, qui a contribué à la mise en place aussi de la Réserve fédérale en 1913. Mais tout ça pour vous dire que JP Morgan a non seulement arrêté de financer Tesla, mais a interdit aux autres milliardaires auxquels Tesla s'était adressé de le financer, de telle sorte que les travaux de Tesla ont été interrompus. Et en fait, le cours de l'histoire a été changé à cause de cette décision de JP Morgan, puisque, nous dit Marc, les téléphones portables pourraient avoir été créés bien avant les années 2000. Ils auraient pu voir le jour dans les années 1900. Euh, la guerre mondiale, la Deuxième Guerre mondiale n'aurait pas eu le même cours que celui qu'elle a eu.
Super
Autrement
intéressant.
dit, Hitler aurait pu être mis à défaut et n'aurait pas pu construire tous ces camps de concentration et toutes ces horreurs qu'il a faites avec des systèmes de communication qui étaient prévus par Tesla, euh, comme effectivement la téléphonie sans fil. Donc tout ça a eu un impact majeur sur le cours de l'histoire et a retardé toutes ces découvertes de, moi je dirais, 100 ans à peu près. Euh, Among these billionaires, do you know if Rockefeller was part of the persons who Tesla addressed?
No, I mean he didn't negotiate with Rockefeller, but no, he was not one of the big ones.
Okay.
Um, uh, there were a few. Jacob Schiff was one. Thomas Fortune Ryan was another, and Henry Clay Frick. Frick was associated with Carnegie. Frick had gotten $60 million from Morgan when U.S. Steel was created, and Frick lived in the Waldorf Astoria with Tesla, and I cover that in the second book. So Tesla's meeting with Frick was worth $60 million in 1900. That's worth hundreds of billions of dollars today in today's money. And so for Frick to give him another $100,000. So it's a real tragedy that Morgan blocked.
Yeah. So I will translate what you said. Ce que je demandais à Marc, c'était est-ce que d'autres milliardaires ont financé Tesla ou en tout cas est-ce que Tesla donc a demandé à d'autres milliardaires du type Rockefeller. Rockefeller, qui est présent dans beaucoup de projets mondialistes et importants. Et non, alors Rockefeller n'a pas participé au financement de Tesla. Par contre, il a demandé de l'argent à Henry Clay Frick, ça s'invente pas, hein, Frick, qui travaillait avec Carnegie, le géant de l'acier, concurrent et aussi ami de Rockefeller. Bon, j'ai fait plusieurs choses sur leur collaboration, mais c'est un autre débat. So, yeah, and I will tell again what you said, Mark, about the tragedy that JP Morgan didn't fund Tesla in the end. Donc, Marc nous disait juste avant que il trouvait tragique donc il insistait sur le côté tragique de cet abandon de financement de JP Morgan, ce qui a grandement retardé les travaux de Tesla.
Prochaine question.
Prochaine question.
Alors, qui a principalement financé Thomas Edison, donc le pionnier du courant continu, et comment cela a-t-il influencé sa rivalité avec Nikola Tesla?
Alors, on va peut-être remettre le contexte avant de poser la question. Edison était le concurrent direct de Nikola Tesla et contrairement à ce dernier, il a été très plébiscité et très valorisé dans les livres d'histoire.
Oui.
Il est à l'origine de l'électricité, tout le monde connaît son nom. Et de la même façon, Tesla a été effacé.
Oui.
Donc, on se demande si les financements de Edison sont liés à JP Morgan, peut-être,
Oui.
ou... Okay, so next question is about Thomas Edison, the rival, I would say, of Nikola Tesla. And I just saw on Wikipedia that Tesla worked for Edison in the beginning. So, what about this rivalry? Was it cooperation, rivalry? Was there a jealousy maybe? And how did Thomas Edison get his fundings for his works? So there are two questions in one in this part. What would you say about Edison?
Oh, I missed the last part? Someone about funding? What was the question about funding?
How did Thomas Edison get his fundings? Who funded him?
Here is more irony. And, I took French, but unfortunately, I didn't do too well in it. You speak it so wonderful. I think I could have done all right with my teacher. Um, Tesla wanted very much to work for Edison. He was the Napoleon of invention. He was the most famous people in the world. He invented the light bulb, not the only light bulb, but he invented the one that worked the best. He also invented a machine that could speak in other languages, could record the voices of birds, the phonograph. So that was a very magical kind of a thing. And Tesla worked for Edison in Paris in 1883. And Tesla traveled all around Europe. He went to St. Petersburg and Berlin and fixed all Edison's equipment all over the place. And at that point, he invented what became the induction motor and the hydroelectric power system, the electrical grid. So he wanted to bring this invention to the Napoleon of inventions, to the greatest inventor in all the world, which is Tom Edison. So we moved to New York to work for Edison, and he tried to talk Edison into his alternating current induction motor and AC polyphase system, which was what's used today called the electrical grid. The whole world runs on this system. Edison was in a dispute with George Westinghouse and with Elihu Thomson. So there were three companies. There was the Thomson Houston Company, the George Westinghouse Company, and the Edison Company, and they controlled all of the Northeast of the United States. Each one had about 1,000 power plants. And at that time, you could only send electricity about a mile with power dropping off over distance and only for lighting. You couldn't run a toaster, you couldn't run a refrigerator. And if you were near the power station, your light bulbs were bright. If you were far away, they were dim. So they were all coal operated. So if you wanted to, light up Geneva or any of the towns in Switzerland or in France, you had to have a power station at each little location because you'd only send energy about a mile. Thomson and Westinghouse were both using alternating current, but they all three were using a commutator, which was a very cumbersome machine, which still only allowed you to send energy about a mile. So when Tesla said I had an AC system, Edison got mad because his two competitors who were stealing his ideas were using AC, so he wanted to hear nothing about this. So Tesla worked with just making his DC equipment okay. Edison was backed by Morgan. And this is the irony here, is that when Tesla eventually quits working for Edison, he sells his patents to George Westinghouse, and he does, in fact, launch the hydroelectric power system at Niagara Falls. General Electric, which was run by Morgan and Edison, when Edison was eventually kicked out of that company, he picked up Thomson in the process. They needed Tesla's invention, otherwise General Electric would have gone under. So they formed a partnership with Westinghouse, and they traded some patents. Westinghouse got trolley patents and electrical railroad patents, and Morgan got access to Tesla's patents. So Morgan's wealth, a lot of Morgan's wealth was based on him receiving the ability to use Tesla's previous patents. So when he denied Tesla the money at Wardenclyffe, he wasn't just denying some inventor who came in and asked for the money. He was denying the man that had provided a tremendous amount of wealth to Morgan and allowed General Electric to survive.
So in the end, sorry, because we don't hear very much, there's a noise in the conversation. Did Morgan fund Edison in the end? That's what you.
Morgan funded Edison,
Yeah.
and and then Morgan, and it was called Edison Electric, and then Morgan formed a monopoly, and that monopoly was called General Electric, and he took Edison's name off and changed from Edison Electric to General Electric, and combined the Edison Company with the Thomson Houston Company. That's how GE was formed. Edison was so angry that he forced me a partnership with Elihu Thompson, that Edison walked out of the company and wanted nothing to do with it. So after 1892, 1893, Edison was no longer associated with General Electric. He went out on his own and he went into motion pictures, making motion pictures.
Alors, il y a beaucoup de choses qui ont été dites, mais j'ai pas tout compris à cause du son qui est parasité, mais que vous entendez bien, mais nous, on a du mal à entendre. Donc, alors, Edison était vraiment quelqu'un de très connu pour ses inventions. C'est quelqu'un qui est né 10 ans avant Tesla. Et Tesla a voulu travailler avec Edison. Alors, par ironie du sort, Edison a été financé par JP Morgan, qui a tout d'abord créé une entreprise qui s'appelait Edison Electric et qui s'est ensuite renommée General Electric. En fait, c'est vraiment l'ancêtre de General. C'est de là que vient General Electric. Et Edison a été très blessé que JP Morgan change le nom et se départisse du nom originel qui était Edison Electric. Edison a laissé tomber JP Morgan et s'est allié avec Thomson. Il y avait plusieurs autres personnes. Il y avait Westinghouse. Il y avait aussi Thomson. Donc, ils étaient Edison, Thomson et Westinghouse. Ils avaient toutes les usines, 1000 usines d'électricité. Et à l'époque, l'électricité, donc c'était le courant continu. Hein, Edison, c'est ça qu'il a créé. Il a créé aussi l'ampoule électrique. Et ce courant n'était pas aussi puissant qu'aujourd'hui. Il pouvait être véhiculé sur une distance de 1 mile, donc c'est 1,6 km seulement. Et pour que le courant puisse s'acheminer partout, il fallait vraiment mettre des intermédiaires, des relais, tous les miles en fait. Donc Tesla a travaillé pour Edison pendant un moment. Et puis ils ont créé le electrical grid, c'est le courant, comment on peut dire, c'est le réseau électrique. The electrical grid they created um, is the same as now, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with the alternating current.
Yes, what was going on here is they each had 1,000 power plants. They were all run by coal. There was a tremendous amount of air pollution created before Tesla came along. Tesla's system is clean energy. It runs on waterfalls. And it is so when Tesla's system came into Niagara Falls, he made obsolete all these little local power stations and stopped the pollution into the atmosphere. I think Tesla is the single most important person to help slow down global warming because he created a utopian system, a perfect system that runs on clean energy and is free in the sense that it runs on a waterfall. You're not sapping the energy from oil or coal. It's running on a renewable energy, which is the waterfall.
And another thing that I'm not sure about, if I understood well, the direct current that Edison used in the beginning, he changed for the alternating current with Tesla or before Tesla?
They they were two companies were using AC, but it was still inefficient. You needed to get rid of something called a commutator. Tesla did away with the commutator. So all three systems could only send energy 1 mile power dropping off over distance. After Tesla came in, energy could be sent hundreds of miles for running factories, for running refrigerators and toasters and vacuum cleaners. Before that, you could only light bulbs.
Ok, donc Tesla, ce qu'il a changé, c'est déjà, il a rendu l'énergie propre parce qu'il y avait beaucoup de pollution dans l'air, de l'énergie qui était, de l'électricité qui était en vigueur avant que Tesla n'arrive pour pour travailler avec Edison euh, sur la grille, sur le réseau électrique. Donc, il a vraiment assaini l'électricité et il a permis de développer une électricité qui était beaucoup plus facile à transporter et qui pouvait se transporter sur des centaines de miles, donc 160 kilomètres versus 1 mile avant qu'il apporte ses lumières, sans jeu de mots, aux travaux d'Edison pour électrifier le monde. Um, so the electrical grid was ready in 18, how much? What's the
It
year?
was, yeah, I want to say one other thing. It's like comparing a horse and buggy to a rocket ship. Tesla invented the rocket ship. And so it's the electrical grid. He spoke as the inventor of the hydroelectric power system in 1897, and it came into being and did away with all of these DC equipment and also the inferior AC equipment. The whole world today still runs on Tesla's electrical power system. Most systems run on hydroelectric power, but they still are coal operated. I'm totally against nuclear power. All a nuclear power company does is boil water. That's all nuclear power does to create steam, and it's too dangerous, particularly with terrorism. So Tesla's system is a utopian dream. It runs on a renewable source of energy. It does not sap the earth of oil or coal and does not pollute the earth and provides essentially free power for the entire world. The electrical companies have to put in power lines, et cetera, and so that's why they charge the money. But the source is free. It's a waterfall.
And so it's 1897.
Yes, that's when it began.
Alors, ce que dit Marc, c'est que donc, le réseau électrique, vraiment, comme on le connaît, ça a quand même été fait en 1897, 1897, et que Tesla travaillait sur de l'énergie vraiment propre. N'était pas avec le nucléaire, c'était pas de l'énergie qui venait du charbon ou du pétrole, c'était vraiment l'énergie des chutes d'eau, des cascades, c'était l'énergie hydraulique essentiellement. Et que Marc vraiment salue ce travail de préserver l'environnement et de ne pas abîmer nos ressources fossiles. OK, so next question.
Maintenant, on va parler de quel a été le rôle précis de John George Trump, l'oncle de Donald Trump, dans l'examen des documents de Nikola Tesla après sa mort, et dans quelle mesure ces conclusions ont-elles influencé la perception des travaux de Tesla par le gouvernement américain?
So, yeah, on va peut-être compléter en français parce que ce qu'on a remarqué dans les Tesla Files, c'est que l'oncle de Donald Trump intervient dans
Mm.
cette histoire. Ça nous a surpris d'ailleurs.
Mm.
C'est-à-dire qu'après la mort de Tesla, il y a eu des fouilles qui ont été faites par les services secrets, par la CIA et par le FBI, et que John J. Trump, donc John George Trump,
Trump.
a été mandaté pour analyser les documents qui ont été trouvés dans les malles et dire si c'était important ou pas important. Est-ce qu'il y avait des travaux révolutionnaires dedans ou pas? Et ce qui a été dit dans les Tesla Files, d'après les données officielles, c'est que John J. Trump a conclu que ça n'était pas important, que les documents qui ont été trouvés n'étaient pas des documents euh, d'importance, des documents significatifs. So, in the 2 or 3 days after the Tesla's death in the New Yorker's hotel, John J. Trump has been assigned to look at the trunks and see if the documents were valuable, if they were significant in the discoveries, in the search, in the works of according to the works of Tesla. So he said that there was nothing important in these trunks. So why did they choose this guy? Did John J. Trump lie? And
C'est quoi son véritable rôle, en fait,
what's his role in between the U.S. governments and Tesla and the CIA and FBI? So what's going on in these
Yeah.
people?
Well, first of all, you have to remember when this was. Tesla died in January of 1943. This was during the height of World War II.
Mm-mm.
And again, the Germans were trying to build a nuclear bomb, and the Americans were trying to build a nuclear bomb. The head of the nuclear bomb program was Vannevar Bush. Vannevar Bush was the head of secret weapons development for the American government. Vannevar Bush had been the dean of MIT, and one of his professors was John G. Trump, who happened to have been Donald Trump's uncle.
Mm.
Uh, so that was the link between Donald Trump and John G. Trump. So John G. Trump was a brilliant physicist, but Tesla was an old man at this point. He was feeding pigeons. A lot of people, even today, did not know that Tesla was negotiating with Joseph Stalin, that Tesla was negotiating with General Andrew McNaughton, and that Tesla was negotiating with Franklin Roosevelt's people to try and sell them the particle beam weapon to help in the war effort and prevent a nuclear bomb from being flown over. He would shoot it down immediately with a death ray. So there was a lot of dismissal of Tesla after the fact. As I said, that's why I wrote the first book. There was a lot of prejudice against Tesla. It's hard to imagine today because he's so famous because of Elon Musk and Tesla Motors. But all throughout from the 1950s all the way through the early 2000s, no one knew who Tesla was. He was very unknown. And so Trump looked at Tesla's papers and looked at the particle beam weapon paper and determined that it was much too difficult to build and that there was no point in worrying about it, and then we should send all the papers to Yugoslavia. And what I discovered, there was another General Craig E., who was the first man to fly a jet plane for the military during World War II. Whoever got a jet plane during World War II was very, very important. So this was a very secret airplane. They put a fake propeller on it when it was in the airport so that it would look like it was a regular a propellant plane, but it really was another plane. And so Craig E. spoke to Vannevar Bush, who again is the head of the Manhattan Project, the building of the nuclear bomb, and said, wait, we cannot send these papers over to Europe. I don't care what John G. Trump said. These are important papers. We have to keep them. And the military did, in fact, keep them for about 10 years. The Osprey helicopter airplane, where the helicopter takes off like a helicopter, then it rotates into the airplane position. That's Tesla's invention. Bell Labs developed it, and there's no doubt that they used Tesla's papers. So Tesla's papers were secretly being used by the government for 10 years, and they they overrode John Trump's derision of Tesla, and in fact used the papers to develop the Osprey helicopter airplane and the railgun and maybe some other inventions that we simply don't know about.
Mm. Okay. And so John J. Trump was working with the CIA or the FBI, you think?
He was working for Vannevar Bush. It was
Yeah.
called NDRC, National Research Defense Council, which became the Manhattan Project, secret weapons development for the country. The CIA did not come into being The OSS wasn't, it was precursor to the CIA, and the OSS was definitely interested in Tesla's papers as well. But Trump was working for Vannevar Bush and the NDRC, National Defense Research Council. One of the branches of that council built the atomic bomb.
Ok. Oui, en fait, je demandais si John J. Trump il travaillait pour la CIA, mais en fait, la CIA n'existait pas encore puisque elle a été créée en 1947 et qu'avant ça, c'était le OSS, donc c'est Office of Strategic Services, donc le bureau des, euh, des services stratégiques. L'oncle de Donald Trump, John George Trump, a été mandaté par Vannevar Bush. Is that the same Bush family? Then no,
No,
nothing to do. Okay.
coincidence.
Donc c'est pas la famille de George W. Ni de George tout court Bush, mais en tout cas Vannevar Bush travaillait pour la recherche de l'armée, la recherche militaire américaine.
In the movie, the movie Oppenheimer, Matthew Modine plays his part in the movie Oppenheimer. That's who Vannevar Bush.
Dans le film Oppenheimer, on en parle de tout ça. Donc d'ailleurs, on n'a pas fini de le regarder, n'est-ce
Ouais.
pas? Il faudrait qu'on le finisse. Donc il faut rappeler le contexte. À ce moment-là, on est en 1943 quand Nikola Tesla meurt. Donc c'était la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. On n'avait pas encore terminé. C'était la fin enfin, les 2 dernières années de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Donc il y avait un enjeu stratégique à garder les documents de Tesla. Donc John J. Trump a dit que aucun document n'était significatif et qu'il n'était pas important. Seulement, dans ces documents, il y avait le plan de construction le Death Ray, le Death Beam, donc le rayon de la mort. Et il y avait également le plan d'un avion qui fait aussi hélicoptère. C'est un hélicoptère qui se transforme en avion, qui peut décoller du sol comme un hélicoptère et qui ensuite peut voler comme un avion. Et ça, c'est une invention de Tesla. Et ça a été développé par l'armée américaine. D'ailleurs, on l'a vu dans les Tesla Files, on a vu ce que ça donne, hein, ça existe. Donc maintenant, grâce au plan de Tesla, c'est pour cela que les services américains ont gardé ces documents, ces malles, pendant 10 ans avant de les donner au musée Tesla à Belgrade en Serbie. Donc on ne sait pas, en tout cas, Mark Cypher ne sait pas s'il y avait d'autres plans pour d'autres inventions dans ces malles, mais il présume que oui, il y en avait d'autres. Ce qu'on ne savait pas à l'époque non plus, ce qu'on l'a su très récemment, c'est que Tesla avait négocié aussi avec Staline, j'ai oublié de dire dans la première partie. Donc il a vraiment négocié avec tous les chefs d'État de l'époque, Roosevelt, Churchill, pour cette fameuse arme de destruction massive, faut quand même le dire, qui concurrençait la bombe nucléaire. Voilà. Donc par rapport à John J. Trump, c'est tout ce que je peux comprendre de ce que vient de nous dire Marc.
Ok. Pour rebondir du coup, alors comment l'implication présumée de l'OSS dans la surveillance des travaux de Tesla a-t-elle influencé la diffusion ou la suppression de ces idées?
So yes, according to the Secret Services um, aspect. How did the OSS, then not the CIA, which was not existing, and the FBI monitor Tesla's work? Do you think there was really surveillance on Tesla's work at this moment before his death?
Yeah, yes, they were definitely monitoring him. They knew that he was negotiating with the Soviets,
Yeah.
um, and it was legal at that time because, as I said, Amtor Trading Company was working with General Electric and Ford and 300 other companies. So, but Tesla selling them a weapon was a little bit dicey. I don't think he could have done that. But he also was broke, and it was a way for him to make money. And he also saw it as a peace machine. He felt if every country had a particle beam weapon, then no country would ever attack another country because there would be no way that they would ever win. So Tesla's idea that if every country had a way of an iron dome, then no country would ever attack another country. So he saw it as a peace machine as well as a weapon of war. It's an irony. I
Alors,
think what was the question?
yeah, the question say is the OSS and the FBI were they monitoring Tesla's work?
Yeah. The FBI was monitoring Tesla. J. Edgar Hoover was afraid that Tesla would give his secrets to Kasanovich, who was his nephew, who was part of a communist country, which indeed was true. They were not happy that Tesla sold the particle beam weapon to the Soviet Union. The OSS was very interested in getting the particle beam weapon, uh, uh, getting the details of it. And I think, frankly, what happened was it took hundreds of billions of dollars to build the nuclear weapon. And Franklin Roosevelt, President of the United States, was looking at two very powerful weapons. He was looking at Einstein's atom bomb and Tesla's particle beam weapon. And he had to put all of his resources into the atom bomb because it was just too important. Because whoever built the atom bomb first would win World War II. So it took 50 years for the railgun to come into existence. And that's why John Trump basically said you can send it out. It's too complicated. It'll take too long to develop. And in a way, he was right. It did take a very long time to perfect what today we're calling the railgun. But we've never perfected Tesla's actual particle beam weapon.
Ok. Alors oui, l'OSS, donc l'ancêtre de la CIA et le FBI, surveillaient les travaux de Tesla parce qu'ils ne voulaient pas que ces travaux tombent dans les mains ennemies des Russes, de l'URSS.
I'll
Euh,
be right back. I have a no, I'll be
euh, et Tesla pensait que, au contraire, si tout le monde avait cette arme, son téléforce, son rayon de la mort, enfin, ce qui permettait de protéger en fait une zone, c'est comme un dôme, hein. Eh bien, il n'y aurait plus de guerre parce que tout le monde pourrait se protéger les uns des autres et ça n'aurait aucun intérêt de se faire la guerre. Donc, lui, c'est ce qu'il prônait. Euh, et en fait, ce qu'a choisi le gouvernement américain, c'est de développer la bombe nucléaire plutôt que d'investir dans le rayon, dans l'arme de Tesla, qui était trop compliqué. D'ailleurs, c'est ce que j'ai oublié de dire tout à l'heure. John J. Trump disait que c'était trop compliqué les plans de Tesla par rapport à cette arme. Donc, on n'allait pas concentrer les forces sur le développement de l'arme et que ça s'est fait beaucoup plus tard, 50 ans plus tard. Donc, d'abord, ils ont développé la bombe nucléaire pendant ces dernières années de guerre mondiale. Et ensuite, ils se sont attachés à développer l'arme de Tesla à particules.
Ensuite, alors, est-ce qu'il peut nous expliquer l'importance de la tour Wardenclyffe dans les travaux de Tesla et pourquoi elle n'a jamais été achevée?
So, talking about Wardenclyffe Tower, what was the aim of this tower and why it was never completed and what happened exactly and what could have been done with this tower?
Uh, as we said before, Tesla built a larger tower than he should have built,
Mm-mm.
and so Morgan cut the funding. And the tragedy was not only that he blocked, not only did he stop funding Tesla's tower, but that he blocked Tesla from getting other people to complete the tower. So the tower was never built, completed. And the question is whether or not it would have worked. What Tesla wanted is exactly what we have right now. You guys are in Switzerland. I'm in Rhode Island, which is in between New York and Boston. And it's like we're sitting in the living room together.
Yeah.
And Tesla was telling Morgan exactly that at the turn of the century. He said, you'll be able to talk to somebody in Australia as if you're sitting across the room from him. Please give me the money to complete this tower. I will advance the world a century. Another person may not come along in another 100 years who could not do this. And it took about 100 years for us to get Zoom and StreamYard and the kinds of things that we're doing FaceTime right now. So Tesla was completely right. The big question is whether or not the tower would have worked. Would he have had a worldwide mass communication system at the turn of the century? And could he transfer power from Long Island? He wanted to light the Paris Exposition of 1902 from Long Island. Could he send electrical energy from the tower all the way across the ocean to France? I think the answer is yes. I think he would have succeeded. And I think part of the proof of that is I go into it a lot in the second book, Tesla Wizard at War. In 1915, before we entered World War II, before America entered World War II, Tesla was working for the German company Telefunken. Telefunken was in competition with Marconi. Marconi was associated with Great Britain at the time because he was half British. This is World War One. And so you had two competing wireless networks. You had the German wireless network and the Italian wireless network. And Tesla was working for the German wireless network, completely legal. It was before we were involved in World War One. And Tesla went to their wireless station on Sayville out on Long Island, and he told uh, Jonathan Zenneck, who was a major electrical engineer, and also Ferdinand Braun, who had shared the Nobel Prize with Marconi. He said, "You're wasting all of your energy sending it out of the top of the tower. Don't send it out of the top of the tower. Send it down through the earth. That's what you need to do." So Telefunken increase their earth connections. And if you look at the New York Times and the articles in both books, that right after they increased the ground connection, they tripled their power, and Telefunken became the most powerful wireless station in the world. So what Tesla basically said was, I want you to do X, Y, Z, and Q. And if you do X, Y, Z, and Q, you will increase the power. They did X, Y, Z, and Q, which involved increasing the ground connection. They tripled their power. I think that New York Times article is definite proof that Tesla's ideas were correct, that you could transmit a lot more energy through the earth, and that our wireless, the radio stations only travel about 30 miles. If you're in a car, drive about 30 miles away, you lose the radio station. Um, Tesla was saying the whole entire wireless system developed in an inferior way. We should have been sending it through the earth. Now we have satellites, so it's a whole different, entirely different thing. But the entire radio production evolved in an inferior way because Tesla failed at Wardenclyffe.
And just one more question before translating. Is that the reason why now the internet is going under the Atlantic Ocean to connect America to Europe? Or there's nothing to do? There's no
No,
connection.
because they're still using wires. Tesla felt you could use it would be wireless, and he felt you could transfer 95% of the electricity from one station to another by sending it through the earth as conduction. So the earth itself would operate like a wire, and you would be able to transfer energy directly through the earth. And no one else has ever done this. Well, we did it in the very first show of the Tesla Files. Travis Taylor had these two towers, and he sent electricity through the earth and to the other tower, and we ran a boat in the water. And I helped establish and set that whole thing up. But he built it all. He did it all. But it was my idea to help in the development of showing how when you pull the light out of the ground, it didn't work, and when you put it back in the ground, it worked. So that was proof that Tesla's idea, he did this over a weekend. Travis Taylor has two PhDs, a brilliant, brilliant scientist. And I think he established, the first step to establish that Tesla was right, that Wardenclyffe would have worked had he succeeded in getting the money
It's
from Morgan.
it's a shame that these works didn't uh, um, continue now because we know it works. We saw in the Tesla files it works through the Earth. So why did nobody took it up and develop it? Well, maybe we'll see. So let me translate. Donc la Wardenclyffe Tower, c'était la tour donc que Tesla a construite 2 fois plus haute que ce qui était prévu avec JP Morgan, mais qui n'a pas pu être finie faute de moyens puisqu'il n'y a plus d'argent. Et selon Tesla, elle permettait de se servir de la terre, du sous-sol, pour conduire l'électricité, conduire la puissance. Et effectivement, c'est ce qui a été reproduit dans les Tesla Files, on l'a vu dans le premier épisode. Le principe développé par Tesla était correct, était efficace, puisque on l'a vu avec les reproductions des travaux de Tesla, on a réussi à allumer une ampoule et à faire marcher un bateau à distance avec simplement l'énergie qui était captée par les tours et propagée dans le sol. Donc, selon Marc, c'est un plan qui marche, et d'ailleurs, on l'a vu en action donc, dans cet épisode. Euh, oui, donc avec cette tour, on aurait pu avoir déjà StreamYard et Zoom, bon, on l'a déjà dit un petit peu avant, 100 ans plus tôt, puisque l'énergie aurait été vraiment développée à son maximum. Et en fait, ce que disait Tesla, c'est que la puissance de l'énergie, d'électricité, était triplée en passant par directement le sol. Donc pas des câbles dans le sol, pas des fils dans le sol, mais directement le sol en lui-même, la Terre est un très bon conducteur pour cette énergie. Alors, il nous disait qu'aujourd'hui, c'était les satellites qui avaient pris le relais, mais moi, j'ajoutais que ça serait peut-être bien qu'on développe un petit peu les travaux de Tesla à ce niveau-là, euh, en se servant de la Terre. Ça éviterait peut-être aussi des radiations qui sont mauvaises pour la santé. Et ça, c'est ma petite touche personnelle.
Comment Tesla a-t-il pu résider à l'hôtel New Yorker pendant 10 ans sans argent et quels travaux y a-t-il réalisé, notamment en lien avec des tunnels menant au métro?
Oui, donc, so in English, how did Tesla manage to stay at the New Yorker hotel without any money? And what were his works with the tunnels leading to the subways, you know, behind the New Yorkers? He built like a Wardenclyffe Tower in the hotel. So is that right? Because that's what we thought during the Tesla files.
Yeah, that was a creative idea of Travis Taylor, Dr. Taylor. Um, Tesla had invented the wireless system. Marconi pirated all of his inventions, but Marconi got stuff done that Tesla never got stuff done. Marconi built a worldwide empire. Tesla built one tower and put all his marbles in this one tower and never did anything beyond that in wireless. And I think that Tesla failed. I think what Tesla should have done once Morgan was a dead end, he should have established that he had invented wireless telephone. He could have easily set up a system between New York and Long Island and simply proven that. But he wouldn't do it. He was too proud. He was going to do the whole thing or not do it at all. So he offered his invention to the Westinghouse Company, and the Westinghouse Company didn't fund him either, didn't give him the money he needed to finish the tower. So 30 years later, when Westinghouse Broadcasting came into being, Tesla went in there with Hugo Gernsback, who was the father of science fiction. You can look at Amazing and Wonder Stories by Hugo Gernsback Productions. Tesla's autobiography is written in Electrical Experiment by Hugo Gernsback. And they basically shamed the Westinghouse company into paying for Tesla's rent at the Hotel New Yorker. Uh, Tesla basically said, look, I offered you this wireless device and now you're using it and you didn't any. I gave you the hydroelectric power system. Don't you think you owe me something? So they paid for his rent for 2 rooms at the Hotel New Yorker for the last 10 years of his life. Meanwhile, he had lived at the Hotel Pennsylvania, which was, if you go down into the subway, it's right near there. The Hotel Governor Clinton and the original Waldorf Astoria. The original Waldorf Astoria was taken down, and the Empire State Building was put up in its place. So Tesla could look out his window and he would see the Empire State Building. He wasn't just looking at the Empire State Building, he was looking at his life in the gay 90s when he was a rich, wealthy man living in the Waldorf Astoria, because that's where the Waldorf Astoria was. So Travis got the idea that maybe the actual building of the Hotel New Yorker was 600 feet tall, which is how tall the Tesla actually wanted his tower to be. And it had tunnels, it had a ground connection. Maybe he could use the actual Hotel New Yorker to do some of his experiments. He had offices in another building, the J.C. Penney had built, um, and that was 800 feet tall. And he offered J.C. Penney at that time. I'm sorry, it was the Woolworth building. It wasn't Penny. It was the Woolworth building. And he offered Woolworth that I could put a tower up at the top of your 800-foot tall Woolworth building. That's where his offices were. So Travis Taylor's idea that Tesla had created a laboratory in the top of the tower was a good idea. And we went up into the final floor of the Hotel New Yorker, and it's an attic. And there really is a room in the attic, which would make that kind of sense. So I'm working with Tim Eaton, who used to work with George Lucas. He was a editor there, and we are writing a screenplay, and we're t telling Tesla's life story, and we're imagining that maybe Tesla did indeed, in fact, build a laboratory in the Hotel New Yorker, but there's no real proof that he actually did. So it was a great idea, but it'd be interesting if he did. But we did know that he did try to put towers in at the Woolworth building, and he probably had some type of arrangement. He must have done some experiments at the Hotel New Yorker.
Alors, en fait, on ne sait pas s'il y a une expérience, si Tesla a fait une expérience avec l'hôtel New York, mais c'est possible et c'est probable qu'il ait quand même essayé, en tout cas, et il avait un laboratoire, enfin, il n'y a pas de preuves, mais Marc pense qu'il y avait un laboratoire qui était en attique, en haut du New Yorkers. Et par rapport au financement de sa chambre, c'est la compagnie Westinghouse qui, elle, a développé vraiment le travail, enfin, l'énergie sans fil euh, de façon mondiale. Et en fait, c'est grâce aux travaux de Tesla qu'elle a pu développer son réseau sans fil. Et donc, Tesla a demandé à ce que il lui paye, donc la compagnie lui paye les 10 ans d'hôtel avec deux chambres. C'était la moindre des choses. Et d'après ce que nous dit Marc, Tesla était quand même assez fier. Et c'était du genre à, s'il ne réussit pas à faire tout, il préfère ne rien faire et abandonner les travaux. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il a abandonné les travaux après l'échec avec JP Morgan sur la tour Wardenclyffe.
Alors, est-ce qu'il sait où se trouve actuellement la fameuse boule de la tour de Tesla?
Donc en fait, cette tour,
Oui.
d'après les enquêtes qu'on a vues dans les Tesla Files, était surmontée d'une boule qu'on n'a pas retrouvée. So what about the bowl that was supposed to be on the top of the tower? You hardly found it, but it wasn't the right one in the end. So what was the use of this bowl, and did you find it in the end?
I actually thought it might really have been it. Jason dismissed it, but it seemed reasonable to me. This was Tesla's towers out in Colorado Springs,
Ah,
and he was experimenting. So it was an early experiment. He later replaced that ball with the globe that you see at Wardenclyffe. In Wardenclyffe, it looks like a mushroom. The top of the tower was not for transmitting, it was for collecting the energy. So the energy would be in all these bulbs inside the top of the tower. Then he would drive the energy down and send it through the earth.
mm.
So the top of the tower is for collecting the energy, and that's what the bulb was going to do. It was going to collect the energy and then transmit it down through the ground.
Hmm. Ok, en fait, cette boule, c'était pour surmonter la tour de Colorado Springs, parce qu'il y a eu deux sites sur lesquels Tesla a fait ses expériences. Et il y avait la Wardenclyffe Tower qui était dans l'État de New York, à Long Beach, où la Wardenclyffe Tower, c'était comme un champignon, en fait. Le chapeau, c'est comme un dôme qui permettait de collecter l'énergie qui ensuite était diffusée le long du mât et qui disparaissait, enfin qui se diffusait dans la terre. Et la boule, en fait, elle était censée remplacer ce que le dôme faisait à Wardenclyffe dans la tour qui a été construite à Colorado Springs. Et donc cette boule, eh bien, elle servait à ça. So you didn't find it in the end, this
No,
bowl.
no, we didn't.
Ils l'ont
No.
pas trouvée parce qu'en fait, ils ont
Ok.
cru la trouver. Il y a une famille qui a présenté cette boule pour voir si c'était possible que ce soit cette boule, mais ça n'était pas celle-ci. Donc, elle n'a jamais été trouvée, la boule de la tour de Colorado Springs.
Nikola Tesla a-t-il des descendants?
Ah, did Nikola Tesla have children? Did he have children, grandchildren? Was he married? Do you know about him privately?
He had a lot of girlfriends. Most of them were married people, but he was celibate. he did not have sex with anybody, as far as I know. There's a lot of proof that he was celibate. So whether or not he had homosexual tendencies, we don't know. But he had many, many friends and a lot of male friends and female friends. And I discuss a lot of the letters between a lot of the ladies that he knew. But he did not have sex with people. He was
Well, no,
totally dedicated to his work.
no romance in his letters.
They're romantic. They are romantic,
Yes.
but they don't go anywhere.
Ok. Alors, on ne sait pas si Nikola Tesla était homosexuel ou pas. Il avait beaucoup de connexions de lettres avec des femmes. Il a eu beaucoup d'échanges, mais d'après Marc, il n'y a pas eu de relations sexuelles, il n'y a pas de descendants. Il était très concentré sur son travail, donc il n'a pas eu le temps ou pas pris le temps de construire un foyer et de faire des enfants.
D'accord. Peut-être question en plus pour Mark
Marc.
Seifer personnellement. À travers les travaux de Tesla, est-ce que lui, ça a changé sa vision, sa grille de lecture pour comprendre le monde?
Oh, that's interesting. About you, did these works of Tesla change your vision of the world, how it works, by studying his story? Did it change something?
Yes, very much in a lot of ways. But what's really unbelievable in the second book, spent 10 years trying to figure out Tesla's dynamic theory of gravity. Einstein was trying to combine the four forces of the universe, which are strong and weak nuclear forces, uh, electromagnetism, and gravity. Three of those are combined. So they combine strong force, which holds the nucleus together, the weak force, which holds neutrons together, and electromagnetism, which holds molecules together. But they're unable to combine it with gravity. Einstein spent 40 years of his life trying to combine gravity with electromagnetism. I'm going to do it in 2 minutes. Tesla's invention, idea of the dynamic theory of gravity. What is gravity? What Tesla said is that all matter is absorbing energy all of the time. So this pen is absorbing energy. This book is absorbing energy. This phone is absorbing energy. I'm absorbing energy. The earth is absorbing energy. The earth is absorbing a tremendous amount of energy, etheric energy. So when I jump up, the reason I come back to the earth is I'm not attracted to the earth. I'm in the way of this influx of energy. So all matter is absorbing energy all the time. Now, I read a book by George Gamow, Gamow, called 30 Years That Shook Physics. And in that book, he says that particles, when they measured particles' spin, they found out that particles were spinning at a tachyonic realm. That means it's spinning faster than the speed of light, and it violated Einstein's theory of gravity. Gamow was friends with Einstein. He's one of the forefathers of quantum physics. And Goudsmit and Uhlenbeck, when they measured particle spin, they found out that it violated the theory of relativity, which said nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. But the electrons are spinning faster than the speed of light. So Dirac came along and he said, let's call the spinning uh, particle the square root of -1, which is an imaginary number. And when you do that, you no longer violate relativity and you're able to combine Einstein's theory of gravity with Einstein's theory of relativity with quantum mechanics. And Dirac got a Nobel Prize for that. So
That,
I thought about that.
yeah.
And I said to myself, if electrons are spinning faster than the speed of light, if they are transferring that into electromagnetism, which is what Gamow said, they must be absorbing energy, which is Tesla's dynamic theory of gravity. So this is what I think is grand unification, what Einstein spent 40 years never was able to solve. I think that all energy, that all matter is absorbing energy all the time. All the particles are absorbing energy all the time. Those particles are spinning faster than the speed of light and transforming that into electromagnetism. That's how you combine gravity with electromagnetism. Makes perfect sense to me. I think I deserve a Nobel Prize for it. I'll share it with Nikola Tesla. But I think that I have solved, at least theoretically, Einstein's theory of grand unification. It's combining Tesla's theory of dynamic theory of gravity with quantum mechanics and with Goudsmit and Uhlenbeck's discovery that particles spin faster than the speed of light. It says that the ether must exist. We are absorbing ether all the time, and we're transforming that ether into electromagnetism. That's gravity is the absorption of ether, and the transformation of that gravity into electromagnetism is grand unification, is combining those two concepts. And so that's what I learned, among many other things from Tesla. And Einstein never actually dismissed the ether. He said you couldn't detect the ether. I think the ether must exist. You've got a galaxy, it's floating in something. And so I think I agree with it. I think it makes sense to me. And that was Tesla's dynamic theory. We're all absorbing energy all of the time, and we're converting that energy into electromagnetism. And that's grand unification. That's the way to combine gravity with electromagnetism.
Alors, on a demandé donc à Marc ce qui avait changé sa vie depuis les travaux de Tesla. Est-ce que vraiment il l'a fait avancer? Et alors, Marc nous répond qu'à plus d'un titre, effectivement, il y a eu beaucoup de changements qui se sont opérés dans sa tête et dans sa vision du monde, notamment à propos des quatre forces de la dynamique. Euh, les quatre forces qu'on apprend en physique, qui sont la gravité, la force électromagnétique, la force faible et la force forte, qui concernent les électrons, la matière. Et que Einstein avait réussi à relier trois parmi ces quatre forces, donc l'électromagnétisme, force forte et force faible, mais pas la gravité qui restait déconnectée des trois autres forces. Et de son côté, Tesla a découvert que la gravité c'était c'était pas ce qu'on pensait, c'était pas ce qu'avait décrit Einstein ou même Newton. C'était plutôt que la matière absorbe de l'énergie. Et plus tu es à une masse importante et plus tu absorbes de l'énergie. Et aussi que les particules le spin des électrons pouvait être plus rapide que la vitesse de la lumière. Donc c'est vraiment la vitesse sur laquelle les électrons tournent pouvait dépasser celle de la lumière. Et ce que ça a fait dire à Marc, c'est que finalement, cette propriété du spin de l'électron, des électrons, de dépasser la vitesse de la lumière, permettait d'expliquer la gravité avec cette histoire de la matière qui attire. Alors, j'ai pas exactement les détails mathématiques de cette conclusion, mais en gros, Marc a relié les travaux de Tesla avec les travaux d'Einstein et explique la gravité grâce à Tesla et au fait que cette, ce postulat selon lequel on ne peut pas aller plus vite que la lumière, finalement, est faux, puisque
Hmm.
les particules de matière peuvent aller plus vite que la lumière. Euh, voilà, donc c'est vraiment pour moi très révolutionnaire, vu
Ouais.
que j'ai fait mes armes dans les écoles classiques de physique et de mathématiques, mais très intéressant. Euh, Très intéressant, very interesting. Tesla discovered ether?
Well, he believed that it existed, and I think that he believed that it was an alternating current at billions of times a second. It's vibrating so
Mm.
rapidly we can't detect it. But it must exist. And so when light is coming from the sun to the earth, if it travels at a particle, you can see it. But if it's a wave, it has to go through something. That something is the ether. And what Tesla is saying is that what gravity is the absorption of ether. So the reason we fall back to the earth when we jump up, we're not attracted to the earth. We're in the way of the influx of the earth. So the earth is absorbing ether, the moon is absorbing ether, and I think that's what keeps them near each other is competition. And so it's a different way of looking at what gravity really is.
Ah oui, en fait, c'est l'élément qui me manquait, l'éther. Donc, il nous parle de l'éther. Tesla croyait en l'existence de l'éther, qui est une sorte de matière, mais un peu avant la matière, qui permet de véhiculer, de porter la lumière, par exemple, ou la gravité, ce qu'on appelle la gravité. Et qu'en fait, c'est le matériau, qui n'est pas une matière, mais qui permet quand même de soutenir, de supporter l'énergie, qui lie, par exemple, la Terre avec la Lune, les étoiles. C'est un peu ce qu'on appelait le vide avant. It's a bit what we called the emptiness in the particles, in the atoms. It's full of ether, we could say, don't you think?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Mm. Donc,
Particles are mostly space. We are standing waveforms. That's the idea. We're constantly absorbing energy all the time and transform that energy. We're not static. We're not just this piece of matter.
yeah.
We're constantly absorbing energy. That's what his idea is.
On absorbe tout le temps de l'énergie, on absorbe l'énergie les uns des autres, de tout ce qu'on reçoit, et ça se fait à travers l'éther. Donc voilà ce que Tesla a compris et ce que Marc a compris ensuite. So thank you very much,
Merci beaucoup, hein, Marc.
Mr. Cypher, for
Oui.
your time, for your patience, and for all the details you gave us and all the information, which is really important. And I think the French public will be delighted to learn all you
Yeah,
said.
well, speak to the publishers. You could write the introduction, the two of you.
Yeah,
I mean, it should be in French. The book should be in French.
yeah, because it doesn't exist in French, does it?
No,
Parce que
no.
le livre n'existe pas en français. Il nous propose de faire l'introduction.
Wow. Ouais, grand plaisir.
With great pleasure.
Ah, c'est un honneur.
We would love it.
Yeah.
We keep in touch and we talk about it.
Yes, but I have been to Lucerne and with Lois, and we went to Paris and to the south of France and Nice and Monaco.
Tell us when you come over.
Okay,
Oui.
I enjoyed very much this. I
So,
wish I hadn't done so poorly in French. My French teacher said, "I'll give you a C if you promise not to take French too." So I agreed. But they should have taught conversational French. I mean, I can almost understand you. You speak very well and very clear.
so next time you come over, you speak French, we speak French, and we try to get
Yeah.
over your fears or your your
And
lack.
Stephen can learn English and we'll be all
Thank you.
set.
Thank you
Oui.
so
Thank
much,
you so
Mark.
much.
So
Thank
see
you.
you very soon. Speak to you later, and we'll send it to you when it's ready.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you too.
Bye bye.
Bye.